by acknowledging that we are in Mi'kma'ki and the district of Sipekne'katik, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. As you can see, Council is wearing orange shirts for our meeting today. Each year, September the 30th marks the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation and Orange Shirt Day. Orange Shirt Day is an Indigenous-led grassroots commemorative day intended to raise awareness and to promote the concept of every child matters. It is part of a legacy of former residential school student Phyllis Webstad. I encourage you to read Phyllis' story to learn more about the symbol of the orange shirt. Thank you. We will now have a moment of silent contemplation. Next, I would be looking for approval of or amendments to the agenda.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion is carried. Next, I would be looking for the approval of minutes of the July 19th, 2022 Council Policy Meeting and the July 27th, 2022 regular meeting of Council.
So seconded.
Moved by the Deputy Warden, seconded by Councillor Green. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Contrary? Motion has carried. Next, we will move to correspondence for information. I would ask if any member of council wanted to bring any of these items forward for any further discussion or had any questions. Deputy Warden Mitchell.
Yes, item number 94, I was just curious to see what her ask was. If she was asking for something from the municipality or it was just for information purposes. About the holistic Dukla services.
I believe the lady is trying to bring about change to public health regulations around how midwives practice, if I understood the correspondence correctly. And I believe that she's reaching out to anywhere that she can reach out to see if we could affect change. That is my take, as health being a provincial responsibility. I don't know if it's anything that we would have information or ability to impact. Kim?
Through you, Madam Warden, I think we certainly don't have anyone on staff who could give you guidance as far as whether you should or shouldn't support midwives having their power back to serve women where they want to give birth. But if it's something that you want us to look into, we can certainly do that. I don't know if council's in a position to make a statement about this one way or the other without some research behind it.
Folks, what is your wish? Do you wish to receive for information or do you wish to have some research done? Deputy Warden?
So there's no really formal request to do anything, it's just information only, I think, at the present, and if there's a follow-up letter later, then maybe we could look at it, but I took it as information, and
Yes.
thank you.
To this issue, Councillor Musa, or something different? Different? Okay. Councillor Perry, you're good? Okay, so then we will receive this as information at this time. Councillor Musa.
Yeah, I was reading the letter from CN, enclosing the CN in your community 2022 report, and I saw some good stuff they done, but the good thing that could help our community and wouldn't cost them any money is to sell us that rail line instead of selling it to a company that's gonna desert it and leave it as a hazard and not safe for people to go on. And I would like us to send them a letter about that and tell them, if you really want to help our community, you could have done that to us. Thank you. And wouldn't cost you nothing.
Are you making that a motion, Counselor?
Yeah.
Do we have a seconder?
Second.
Seconded by Counselor Perry. Is there any discussion? Counselor Perry.
And just further to that, in the correspondence, speak about the safety aspect of how that line has not been maintained. It is not safe for people to go near, and there are environmental issues already with creosote in waterways that are not being addressed. So things like that, CN should be on top of as a good community partner. Thank you.
Any further discussion?
Question.
Question's been called. And the motion is passed unanimously. Anyone else have anything they wish to raise from correspondence for information? Seeing none, we will move on to correspondence for decision. And the first item is a letter from the COAT, C-O-A-T Association requesting an operating grant. Does anyone on staff want to, Kim?
This is a request that came in just a couple of days ago, so I am almost certain it hasn't gone through the grant committee to look at whether this would qualify for a general government operating grant. Council can either, having read the letter, issue a grant through their general government grant, or there is a process where we can take it through a grant committee for review and a report back to council for approval or a recommendation or a non-recommendation to award.
Do we know if this group is registered under the Societies Act?
Yes, they indicated in their letter that they are a registered nonprofit. They do operate in East Hants, and we have also partnered with them in the past to offer the Nova building for their coat drop-off and pickup. They had a very successful events last year, and we partner with them through our solid waste division as part of a recycling component to make sure that we can, and from our point of view, from a recycling component to making sure that things are being reused. And then, of course, their point of view is to do good for the community as far as providing assistance to folks who need warm winter gear, and they do good work in the community.
Thank you. So council, what is your wish? I believe we do have funds in the general government grant. Sue is telling me we do. Councilor Musa.
Yeah, I would like to move that we provide a grant to the COAT for $2,000.
We have a seconder? Seconded by Councilor Tingley. Saw his hand first. Discussion? Councilor Perry.
Thank you, Madam Warden. One of the things I was going to make the motion as well, but I'd also like to see maybe our staff reach out to this organization, because this seems to be like an organization that we could support more than just once. Like it could become one of our yearly contributors, and I think we need to build a better relationship with them. Times are tough. People are hurting, and I believe the demand for what they're providing is only going to increase this winter and into next. So I'm very happy that the motion's on the floor. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Rhino.
Well, I'm not gonna support it due to the fact that I think it should follow the natural process of the grant system.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
Question.
Question's been called, we'll go to the vote. And the motion has passed, 9 voting yea and 1 voting nay, with Counselor Rhino voting nay. Next item, the selection of a date for a workshop for counselors regarding the former Elmsdale and Lance school sites. The suggestions are October 11th or 27th, or failing those, we could look at November dates, although there are several dates not available on that month. Everyone has their calendar at hand.
Count on the screen.
Okay. 11th or the 27th are the suggested dates. The 27th, I would note, is generally set aside in case we need an extension of council anyway. So just looking for, what is your wish? I'm available either date. Counselor Green.
I would move that we have it on the 27th of October, well, that's already a council-held evening.
Do we have a second by the deputy warden? Counselor Rhino.
No, I was gonna suggest the 11th.
Pardon? Sorry, I missed that.
I was gonna suggest the 11th.
Any further discussion?
Question.
Question's been called. And the motion is passed unanimously. Next item is the appointment of Leanne Martin as Development Officer. Do I need, John, are you doing that?
Well, I can speak briefly to it, Madam Warden. So as it says in the note, that development officers can only be appointed by council in order for them to be able to sign development permits and approve plans of subdivision. So this is a fairly routine motion to appoint Leanne, our latest hire, to development officer.
Is someone prepared to move that appointment? Counselor Hale.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Move the council appoints Leanne Marvin as Development Officer for the Municipality of East Hants per Section 191D and 243(1) of the Municipal Government Act.
Seconded by Counselor Perry. Are you ready for the question? And the motion is passed unanimously. Okay, moving along. Next, we have to select our delegates for the NSFM Fall Conference in Halifax. There is budget for the warden, a CAO or delegate, and 3 members of council. And early bird registration ends October the 9th. And if we have more folks who want to go from that, we can certainly discuss that possibility. So I guess first we'll kind of, okay, Counselor Tingley.
I'd just like to say I'm interested in attending.
Thank you. Anyone else interested in an SFM? We are waiting to see if there is going to be a continuation of the Zoom meeting held there. I have asked the question, have not yet received an answer. Okay. Counselor McPhee had emailed that he had interest. Counselor Eisner? Anyone else interested in attending? Can't twist your arm, Deputy Warden? Anyone else? I didn't, sorry, Counselor Musa?
I said the deputy warden sent an email he's going to.
Did you express interest in email? No. Oh. So that gives us 3 delegates, assuming that Counselor Eisner is free to go. And if anyone else should have interest in going, I just ask if it is in Halifax, it's not a long trip this year, if other counselors were interested, if they could let us know, and I guess we could make the decision later on. We also do not know yet if there's a vote takes place at that AGM, if everyone's allowed to go vote that day, or if only registered delegates can vote. I've asked that question too. Okay, so do we need a motion authorizing myself, the CAO, and Councilors Tingley, McPhee, and Eisner to attend NSFM? Councilor Perry.
I move that the named delegates by the warden be nominated for the NSM Fall Conference.
Been seconded. Any discussion? Question. We'll go to the vote. And the motion is passed unanimously. So that concludes correspondence for decision. That was our time. Okay, we do have a public hearing coming up at 7:30. We have a few minutes, so I think we will start with the Corporate and Residential Services Committee report. Councilor Perry.
Thank you, Warden. The committee held its regular meeting on September 20th, 2022 in council chambers. The following motions are coming forward as a result of that meeting. Canadian Mental Health Association East Hants Colchester Branch presentation. Committee had a presentation from the Canadian Mental Health Association and discussion was held between them, CMHA, and councillors. Various topics were discussed and councillors had their questions answered by them. Number 2, customer service strategy. The CAO presented a customer service strategy report. The committee had their questions answered by staff. The Corporate and Residential Services Committee recommends to Council that Council adopt the customer service strategy as presented at the September 20th, 2022 Executive Committee. As Chair of the Committee, I so move.
Seconded.
Seconded by Councilor Green. Is there any discussion? Question's been called. And the motion is passed unanimously.
In-camera land issues. During an in-camera session, committee members received a staff report regarding various land issues and councillors had their questions answered by staff. No motions are coming forward as a result of the land issues. As Chair of the committee, I move the adoption of this report.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Question's been called. And the motion is passed unanimously. Well, we will move in and begin the Planning Advisory Committee report. Councilor Green, right?
No, there's Councilor Musa here, I have no report, so.
Ah, yes, you were,
Here last.
okay. Yeah. So the Vice Chair of Planning will give the report. Councilor Musa.
The committee held its regular meeting on September 20, 2022 in council chambers. The following motions are coming forward as a result of the meeting. Number 1, special executive meeting for Planning Advisory Committee. A special executive meeting of the Planning Advisory Committee was held on September 8, 2022 in council chambers. Directions were given to staff regarding the plan review, and a follow-up planning advisory committee meeting will be held on September 29, 2022. Second one, bylaw P-1300 campground bylaw. As per council authorization, a stakeholder meeting with campground owner and operators was held in June 2022. The majority of those in attendance had concerns with the proposed bylaw and felt that if the municipality is going to implement a campground licensing bylaw, that pop-up campgrounds should also be required to be licensed. 3 alternative motions have been created for consideration. The Planning Advisory Committee recommends to Council that Council authorize staff use the existing municipal bylaw regulations to enforce items that need to be addressed instead of developing a campground bylaw in order to license campgrounds. As a Vice Chair of the committee, I so move.
Seconded by Councillor Hebb. Is there any discussion on the motion?
Question?
Question's been called. We'll go to the vote. And the motion is passed unanimously.
Item number 3, Scott Blois amendments to designation and zone will be dealt with at the public hearing. Item number 4, Stevens Group, the development agreement amendment for assisted living facility. The municipality has received an application from the Stevens Group of companies. The application is for substantial amendment to an existing development agreement to enable a 4-story, 70 units assisted living facility. The existing DA permits the Magnolia long-term care facility and an assisted living facility, but the time has expired to be able to apply for the permitted long-term care facility. The Planning Advisory Committee recommends to Council that Council give initial consideration to substantially amend an existing development agreement for an assisted living facility on 410 Highway 2, Enfield, to enable a public hearing and authorize staff to schedule a public hearing. As Vice Chair of the committee, I so move.
Seconded by the Deputy Warden. Is there any discussion on the motion?
Question?
Question's been called. And the motion is passed unanimously.
Item number 5, mixed-use center zone review. Staff presented a third report on the mixed-use center MC zone review. The Planning Advisory Committee recommends to Council that Council authorize staff to schedule a public information meeting to consider amendments to the MPS and LUB that require commercial floor space in new buildings and limit the height of new buildings in a prescribed area to 12.2 meter and 3 stories within the mixed-use center MC zone. As Chair of the committee, I so move.
Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Hebb. Is there any discussion on the motion? Deputy Warden Mitchell.
Yes, just a comment that I hear from some of the residents that with the housing crisis we're presently in, that we're going smaller from four stories to 3. Just some comments I wanted to pass on. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Councillor Musa?
Thank you to John. John, did we limit the zone from the daycare and south to the daycare, or the whole thing?
through you, Madam Warden. Yes, the motion from PAC directed us to do everything from the daycare south, so it was that area.
But here it said within the mixed-use center
Well-
MC zone.
Through you, Madam Warden, but it refers to a prescribed area, and that prescribed area, if you look at the map in the staff report, is that area from the daycare south.
Oh, okay, so just want to make sure we don't like lose time on that. Thank you.
And this motion is simply to go to a public information meeting. Any further discussion? Question's been called. And the motion has passed unanimously.
Item number 6, plan update background paper omnibus amendments. Staff presented a plan update background paper with 93 proposed amendments to the East Hants official community plan. The majority of the proposed amendments are housekeeping in nature, while others are to provide clarifications to current planning regulations or to address issues that are not currently covered in the documents. The Planning Advisory Committee recommends to Council that Council authorize staff to draft proposed amendments to the official community plan in regards to proposed changes to the East Hants official community plan, as presented to Executive Committee on September 20, 2022, and outlined in this staff report. As a Vice Chair of the committee, I so move.
Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Tingley. Is there any discussion on the motion? Question's been called. And the motion has passed unanimously. Councillors, we're now moving very close to the hour of 7:30. Perhaps we'll hold the final item until after the public hearing? Well, all right, the deputy warden thinks we have time, so carry on.
Item number 7, plan update background paper parking in Shubenacadie Village Core. Staff presented a background paper regarding the challenges with parking in the Shubenacadie Village Core and what solution might be available. The Planning Advisory Committee recommends to Council that Council authorize staff to prepare land use policies and regulations for parking in the Shubenacadie Village Core based on option 1 and 2 in staff's report dated September 7, 2022, and that staff include an item in the draft 2023-24 budget to design and lay out parking on the property identified as PID 45330214. As a Vice Chair of the committee, I so move.
Seconded by the deputy warden. Is there any discussion? Question's been called. And the motion is passed unanimously.
As a Vice Chair of the committee, I move the adoption of this report.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Contrary, motion has carried. So, ladies and gentlemen, next on the agenda, we have a public hearing. Scott Blois application for redesignation and rezoning in Elmsdale. As the clock ticks down to 7:30. Hey, councillors, this evening we have one item on the public hearing agenda. The purpose of this hearing is for council to hear input from the public prior to making a decision on the proposal. To the members of the public who have chosen to participate this evening, welcome. Please note that council's procedural policy requires that you not cheer, boo, clap, or otherwise disrupt this hearing. Anyone who wants to comment or ask questions will be provided with an opportunity to do so. Tonight, council may approve, reject, or defer its decision on the proposal to a later date. Council approval is required for the proposal to proceed. I will now ask the municipal clerk to outline when the public hearing advertisements were published.
Madam Warden, a public hearing notice appeared in the September 14th and 21st editions of the Chronicle Herald. The notices described the proposal, gave the date and time of the public hearing, and indicated that staff reports were available to the public.
Councilors, the public hearing this evening is for a proposal to redesignate and rezone a property to Village Core. I would now ask the Chair of the Planning Advisory Committee to present his report.
Thank you, Warden. Planning Advisory Committee has considered the proposal on behalf of Municipal Council. The committee has reviewed staff's reports, completed their evaluation, and will make a recommendation to Council during this hearing. Madam Warden, through you, I would now ask staff to present their final report on the proposal.
Thank you, Madam Warden. So the applicant proposes to change the designation from established residential zone to village core zone. That's actually the zone designation to village core designation, and change the zoning from 2 dwelling unit residential zone to village core zone. And you can see the application property outlined in red here. Just so people can orientate themselves, this is the Old Elmsdale School property, and we have Brook Court here. Some images there of the property from Google Earth and from Street View. You can see there's an existing building on the property. The surrounding uses are a mixture of residential, institutional, and village core zoned properties. And within a 5-minute walk of the application property, there is a mixture of uses, R1, which is single unit dwelling, R2, which is 2-unit dwelling, and some village core zones. There are many similar sized properties further along Highway 214 that are zoned village core. And you can see the village core zoning is the purple color zoning along Highway 214. So these initial concept designs were provided by the applicant, and if the application is approved by council, the applicant will be required to meet the form-based zone requirements of the land use bylaw. So this may change if the applicant moves forward with the development, and he'll have to comply with those form-based zone requirements. And one of the things that will change is they're required to have an entrance on the front of the building, no parking further forward than the building. So there's a number of things that they'll have to address. He has indicated that the general design of the building will look like the concept, and also the applicant has approval from the Provincial Transportation Department for their driveway, for a commercial driveway in this approximate location as shown on this plan here. So based on that permit, or the driveway approval, the building will need to be located in this area here, which is away from the properties on Brook Court. So the applicant has, as I just mentioned, a driveway approval from Nova Scotia Public Works. The applicant has indicated that they're looking for multiple tenants, but understands that the building size is smaller if there is only one tenant on the property. He's looking for tenants in the dental, medical, and office space type of uses, and the needs of the tenants and the number of required parking spaces will impact the size of the building, which could be a maximum of 835 meters squared, which is approximately 9,000 square feet. So I'm just going to go straight to the bottom of this slide here just to show you that the size of the building is dependent on the number of uses. So if you have one use or one commercial use in the property, the maximum size of building is 230 meters squared. If you have more than one, it's 835 meters squared, which is the 9,000 square feet as mentioned there. This is a list of potential uses that could go into the building. And the goal for the village core is to allow for a diverse mixture of retail, service, business, and residential uses in an environment servicing both pedestrian and vehicle needs. And some of those uses include animal hospital, business support services and printing, daycare, healthcare services, multiple unit dwellings with a minimum of 8 dwellings up to a maximum of 12 units. And these are to be designed to allow for easy conversion to commercial on the ground floor. office and professional services, and retail. So there are some existing flooding issues on properties along the south side of Brook Court. The pre-existing flooding history of the properties is either a topic for discussion as a civil issue or a discussion that could include provincial road infrastructure through the Nova Scotia Department of Public Works. The development of the application site will require a lot grading plan to be prepared by a professional engineer, and that grading of the lot will mean that the development of the site will not cause any runoff from the property onto adjacent properties, and therefore will not exacerbate an existing issue. So through the processing of the application, we sent out requests for comments, and some of those comments came back. Nova Scotia Public Works confirmed they had no objections. Nova Scotia Environment and Climate Change provided a standard response, but with no comments specific to the proposal. The Fire Department and the RCMP both have no objections, and the Internal Municipal Department of Infrastructure and Operations, all of their comments were related to what would be required at a building permit stage, which includes a requirement for a servicing plan, indicating how the developer intends to service the development of water and wastewater, and the building shall incorporate backflow prevention devices. So those were just a couple of the comments that were provided by that department. The subject property is located within the village centre, with village core zoning opposite the site. The majority of all other sites fronting onto Highway 214 are village core, except for some institutional zone uses, and there are a small number of residential uses. According to the land use bylaw, the minimum lot size for a lot in the village core zone is 700 square metres, and the minimum lot frontage is 15 metres. So the lot in question meets the minimum requirements for consideration of rezoning to a village core. So looking at the surrounding developments in a 5-minute walk radius, this request for rezoning seems consistent with the surrounding community character. Many properties south of the subject property along Highway 214 are zoned village core, and it can also be seen that the property has frontage onto Highway 214 with village core zone properties located across. A public information meeting was held on May the 3rd of this year, and notes from that PIM are included in the staff report. We received 5 return questionnaires out of 62 that were mailed out. 2 responses had no concerns, and 3 of those responses raised concerns, and those concerns include an increase in traffic on Highway 214, new developments on Ralston or off Ralston will increase traffic, improvements needed to Highway 214, potential for flooding on Brook Court. Space is available in the Elmsdale Business Park for this development. There's a privacy impact, existing water drain under properties on Brook Court, and questions whether the property owner will maintain their commercial property. So details of this public hearing have been placed in the Chronicle Herald, municipal website, social media, and also directly mailed to property owners within 300 metres of the application site. Planning staff have completed the review of the proposed redesignation rezoning and consider that proposal will have a positive impact on the area and is consistent with the community character on Highway 214, and it provides an opportunity for additional much-needed commercial space. Staff are therefore recommending approval of these amendments. And this is the flow chart here, flow diagram here, just to show where we are in the process. And we're at the public hearing, and council can either approve or refuse the application, and there is no right of appeal of council's decision tonight. Thank you, Madam Warden.
Thank you, Rachel. Does any member of council have any questions for staff? Seeing none, I would now ask if the applicant has any comments or would like to make a presentation.
No problem. I'm good. She covered everything that's on there.
Thank you. I will now open the floor for comments and questions. If you are viewing the YouTube live stream, you may use the YouTube chat feature, which is being monitored. First, does anyone attending in person have any questions or comments? To ask if you'd come to the mic, please. And please state your name and address for the record.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Tim Bauer, and I live at 5 Brook Court, Elm Street, third place in on the left.
Okay,
Thank you.
So, just to clarify one thing, development that's gonna go in behind our houses, that is a go for sure?
Through you, Madam Warden, that's what's being considered tonight, so council can either refuse or
Okay,
approve
yeah.
the application. It's not determined yet.
Okay, so if it does, I was told at the last meeting over here next door that if you were going to put a fence in, it was only gonna be like 1 point something meter high. That just doesn't fly well with me because there's gonna be, traffic noise, people. And if it's like a 2-story building and somebody's living up on the top of it, it's just too much change for me, but it'd be nice to have a higher fence so people aren't peering over into our backyards. It'd be nice if we could go out and barbecue and do our regular thing in our backyards and not have to see what's going. If you have to see the top of the building, fine. But foot traffic and vehicles and everything else is a no-no. And also just about that water issue. Long before this was brought up about a development behind our house, there was some federal people walking in our road one day, and they were checking out all the water issues up and down the 214. And I asked them to come into our backyard, and they looked at the problem we have. There's a collapsing pipe underground, an old concrete pipe, and it's collapsing in different places and washing all the topsoil out of the yards. And I was told by them that there was federal money available to have that repaired.
Okay.
So that's my two biggest issues. Thank you for your time.
Through you, Madam Warden, I can address the fencing question there. Currently in the land use bylaw, under the form-based zone requirements, there is no requirement for fencing in the village core zone. However, right now, council are undergoing a review of the policies and regulations in that planning document, and one of the recommended changes is a requirement for fencing on village core properties that abut onto residential properties, which would mean that, based on those regulations, buffering would be required along this property boundary here. That's not currently in the regulations, but it is drafted in there that a minimum of 1.5 meter high fence be required. If those package of amendments get approved, then that will be a requirement when the applicant submits a request for site plan approval at that point in time. But we can't require it until those amendments are at least given first reading. So right now, as it stands, if this is approved and goes through that process, and the applicant was to apply for site plan approval before those amendments are given first reading, they wouldn't be required to place a fence on that property boundary. I don't know if the Director of Infrastructure and Operations has any comments on the federal money.
I'm trying, Jesse.
Perfect. Thank you. Through you, Madam Warden. With respect to federal money, the topic of the drainage and the structures, municipal staff are aware that of the concrete pipe and the potential collapse. Anything on with respect to drainage along the Highway 214 is set up for road drainage of the 214, which is a provincial asset. So right now, the municipality itself doesn't have land or assets in that area. So we do not have the ability to spend money on that. It's outside of our authority. Our understanding is that the province wasn't taking ownership of the existing pipe. Don't know the whole story on that piece. That would be a conversation for the province. Funding opportunities that could apply in a situation where a government entity could do work would be an application through FRIP. There's a FRIP program, which is a provincial funding program. Flood risk, don't ask me to know the acronym, I apologize for that. However, that wouldn't be applicable in this situation because that would be a municipality applying for funding to do a project funded through the province, where this isn't municipal owned property, it wouldn't apply. Other federal funding options, that would be through the Climate Change and Adaptation Program through the federal government, and that's something that the province or municipality could apply for. Once again, this isn't a municipally owned property or anything on private property. The municipality wouldn't have authority to do the project on if that were the case. The properties there do drain into, there's a culvert approximately just to the right of where that VC is, but within the road right away. And the area drains in there. There's some culverts crossing Brook Court, and it crosses into the storm system in that general area. Those storm assets are all provincial based on the old history of that road, and municipal staff don't have record or information on those structures. So that would be a direct inquiry to the province that we wouldn't have knowledge or ability to act on. So that there is programs potentially, but it would be a provincial-led initiative with potential application to the feds if that were the case, to my best understanding.
Does any other member of the public have any comments or questions?
Hi, my name is Amy Ettinger. I live at 3 Brook Court. I also would have an issue with the fact that my property is adjacent to this property, and it would really affect the privacy in my backyard. So without a privacy fence, there would be nothing I wouldn't be able to spend quality time in my backyard. Also, a big question is with the property we're talking about is what kind of garbage disposals they would use on the property. If it's multiple units, it would draw in more rodents in the area, and I just wanted to make sure that that would also be taken care of properly.
Through you, Madam Warden, I can't speak to what waste disposal the applicant is planning, but I can say that under the land use bylaw, there is a requirement to outdoor trash receptacles are to be located in the rear or side yard and to be screened from neighbouring properties, so that it will need to be screened from those neighbouring properties. Also, in the package of amendments that I just previously mentioned, there is also a requirement in there that the receptacles be moved, I believe it's 5 meters from any property boundaries with residential properties. So if the applicant was to apply for a site plan approval once those are in place, that would be an additional requirement. And also those amendments actually would be required to be complied with once first reading is given, and based on the current timeline and how things are moving forward, that could be potentially early next year, but we don't know right now whether that's the case. But so it really depends on when the applicant submits their application for site plan approval, and whether those additional requirements will be required at that point. Thank you, Madam Warden.
So I guess my suggestion would just be to postpone the approval until after these other plans are put in place to protect our privacy.
Unfortunately, that's not how the system works. Well, I guess we could put off a decision tonight if we don't have enough information to make a decision, but do you have anything else?
I don't have anything else to say. I mean, the council can make that decision to delay their consideration of this application. But right now, as it stands, all other property owners in the village core are subject to the regulations as they stand right now. And staff feel that I guess there are actually benefits for the applicant to wait until those amendments are in place. So I don't know the intent of when the applicant is planning to build their developments. I don't know their timelines. I don't know if the applicant can share that information with us here tonight.
Before anything gets done for that building, we're pretty much a year out by the time you get site plan approvals. Sorry. Before anything's done there, we're looking at probably a year or better by the time we get site plan approvals, you know, all the engineering that's involved, building plans, that kind of stuff. So typically, and then there's all the approvals that come from municipalities, so that it takes time. So I can't see anything happen within the next year. That's kind of the goal, so. And as far as the answers to the fence and stuff like that, when we talked to Tim before, that 1.5 meter fence, we had already agreed that we'd be looking to put up another fence that would be taller enough so that they could have some privacy and things like that. And our goal is not to put residential there, so we're not looking to put apartments on the top. It's strictly commercial. It may only be ground floor commercial depending on what we get for tenants. And the property doesn't allow a lot because it's not very big. So it would be, you know, limited amount of tenants that would be on that property. So, and as of right now, I mean, it is an R2 lot. I can put a duplex there tomorrow, sight unseen. So at the end of the day, the property will be developed. It's just whether it'll be a duplex or whether it'll be a commercial building that will be probably a little more useful for the community and so on and so forth. So, thanks.
Thank you. Do any other members of the public have any questions or wish to speak?
If I may say one more thing, please. It doesn't have anything to do with the property behind us, Amy and I. But while I'm here, about that fence at the Irving station that's fallen down, it's an eyesore. And over where the tractor trailer hauls in there and unloads the fuel, if we could have somebody do something about that sometime, please.
No, I'm not sure if that's under a development agreement or what, but I will ask staff to check into that and get back to us. Thank you. Seeing no one else from the public waiting to speak, I do have some counselors who have questions to ask, but I think according to our agenda and our public hearing, there'll be an opportunity for that just a little bit further down, and I will get to you all at that time. Does any member of the public on the YouTube channel have any comments or questions? Nothing? Okay. Does any member of staff have any final comments?
Just some quick comments there. Thank you, Madam Warden. It is mentioned in the presentation, but the applicant is fairly limited in terms of how big a development he can build on that property. It is quite a small property, and the requirement for parking does limit the ability to build a larger building. And when I did some of the math on the required parking spaces for, say, an office use or a retail use, and this site plan here shows around 20 parking spaces. And based on that, it looks to be potentially around a 400 meters squared building, maybe just a little bit larger than that. So I don't know if that kind of gives any reassurances to the local property owners, but there's not enough room on there to build a large building and be able to accommodate all the parking that would be required for that large building. Thank you, Madam Warden.
I would now ask the chair of the Planning Advisory Committee to present his committee's recommendation.
Planning Advisory Committee recommends the council give second reading and approve the amendments to the MPS and LUB that would change the designation and zone of 236 Highway 214 Elmsdale to Village Core VC. As chair of PAC, I so move.
We have a seconder, seconded by Councillor Tingley. I will now go for any final questions or comments from municipal councillors. Councillor Garden-Cole.
Thank you, Madam Warden. I just have a couple of questions that stem from the residents who have attended here and brought up some issues. And the first one is directed to our infrastructure department. and this isn't something that, it's not municipal property, as you say, Jesse, and not our, but it's obviously been an ongoing issue for these residents along there. Is this something that, if there is something out there, can our staff, or can we direct them or help them to get in the right direction in order to get this problem solved for them? Is that feasible? And this is totally separate from the development that's happening here. But I've been to the information meeting, and time and again, I keep hearing about this drainage issue on Brook Court, which will border on this development.
Through Madam Warden, my suggestion would be that the municipality could act as an advocate in promoting that action to the province through writing a letter requesting a review of the stormwater system in that area, potential upsizing consideration, and it's a real advocacy role there. So bringing that forward through an official correspondence from council may be an appropriate action where it could be documented and public record and receive official notice back. We would copy elected officials for the area, and that way a formal review could happen and trigger. And that might be the best option that council could support those residents.
Is that something that would require a motion, or
Yes, it would.
It would.
at this time?
No, we have a motion on the floor at this
Okay.
time.
My second question, the privacy fence, and I realize at this point, that isn't even part of what's required, maybe down the road. But I think all of us can appreciate wanting a fence there. And I think that the developer, a local developer, I was at that information meeting when he implied that it would be a higher fence in respect to those neighbors. So that would be great if that were to happen, regardless of of what the requirements are. And the drainage, it's saying that there are already existing drainage issues there, but that the development, assuring that the development will not create any further issues due to what the engineering of the property and whatnot. That's correct?
Through you, Madam Warden, yes, they'll be required to have a lot grading plan prepared by a professional engineer, and then there's a check at the end of that process. Once they've finished construction, someone will check that the site's actually been graded in accordance with that lot grading plan. So that just means that the lot will not grade towards those existing surrounding property owners.
Okay. Okay, that's all for me. Thank you.
Deputy Warden Mitchell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Following up on Councillor Garden Cole, do we, through you to staff, do we know what's causing the flooding, or any idea what caused the pre-existing flooding history? Is that the collapsed pipe, or just block pipe, or flat land?
May I come back to the mic, please?
Not at
No.
this time, sir. Sorry.
Jesse.
Jesse.
Staff wouldn't have a definitive answer of what has caused it. What I can tell you is that that's a road that predates a lot of our planning requirements that have been added to prevent those types of issues in the future. And so a lot of this neighborhood would have been built up prior to those requirements on drainage design of properties, and it's less due diligence would have happened historically versus now. And that was before municipal involvement with the road network and drainage of it. So it's an old spot. And we're not, from a staff stance, where it's not our infrastructure, we're not aware of any major damage, but that could very well be a scenario as well, but couldn't say definitively.
Just a follow-up, do you know which way the proposed property would drain? Would it go towards the 214 or would it go laterally behind the properties?
Through you, Madam Warden, I don't know if Jesse can elaborate any more, but that would be down to the engineer that would design the lot grading for the property. We don't have any of that information at this point.
So it could go towards the 214. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I have one other counselor with a question, and following that, I will ask if council wishes to allow the member of the public to ask another question. Councillor Musa?
Thank you, Madam Warden. I'm looking at that property and I saw only 3 property could be affected, and probably a little bit higher fence could solve all the problem. I don't think the residents are asking too much from the property owner. I've seen a lot of people that they don't want development at all or something. They're not against anything. They're just looking for some privacy. So did I hear that the owner is willing to go like 2 meters on a fence or? So I think that will fix your problem? Okay. Sounds good to me. Like I said, like they're not opposing anything. They're just, and I saw like their property, like they're 7,000-8,000 square feet, so with no trees, nothing. So a little privacy will be a good thing from the owner. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. We did have a member of the public. That portion of the agenda is passed, so in order to allow him to address council again, I would ask if council is willing to allow that. Okay, go ahead, sir.
Thank you. What most of the problem is, the water flooding and washing that pipe out behind our homes is down past us further where the woods are behind the school. It's all floodplain down in there. So down, I don't know what the number of houses down past us down towards the end of the road, the cul-de-sac is. But there is a big culvert down there that goes under the road. But there's a lot of that flood water from that floodplain down there in the woods. It builds up down there like crazy, and then it comes back in behind our house through that old rotten old concrete pipe. And that's what's causing the problem. And sometimes from the school too, because it's sloped down towards our houses. So we have a 2-stage problem here. We got, when it rains really hard or in the wintertime when you have a snow and it melts, it comes in towards the back of our houses. And then you have the floodplain down there in the woods behind us. When you get a lot of rain, actually it doesn't take a lot of rain. And it runs into that old pipe down behind our place, and I dug one section of it up, and where the bell and the 2 pieces go together, like it's all broken and rotten, and it's washing all the dirt down out of our yards, and way down out towards the 214. So that's what the problem is the water building up down in the woods and flowing our way. That's what the most of it is. That and from behind the school because it's sloped towards our homes.
Thank you. Does any other member of council have any comments or questions? The question has been called. And the motion has passed unanimously. That concludes tonight's public hearing, and I would like to thank everyone for attending. We will now return to the Planning Advisory Report. And Councillor Musa, I believe you have one item question. Oh, we finished it. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. Yes, the deputy warden told me we could and we did. Yes. All right, returning to our agenda. We will now go to the Police Advisory Committee report. Over to you, Councillor Rhino.
Madam Warden, committee held its regular meeting on September 20th, 2022 in council chambers. There are no motions coming forward as a result of the meeting. The RCMP, although did a presentation, their quarterly report, including human resource update, operations update, calls for service data, and a crime prevention presentation. As chair of the committee, I move the adoption of this report.
Seconded by Councillor Musa. All those in favor? Contrary? Motion is carried. Next on the agenda is a nominating committee report, which is a verbal report from myself, so I will turn the chair over to the deputy warden.
Go ahead, Warden.
The nominating committee met earlier this evening to fill vacancies on the audit committee. We had vacancies requiring one public member and 2 council members for that committee. So the nominating committee recommends that Matthew Carmichael be appointed as the public member to the audit committee, and that Councillor Carl McPhee and Deputy Warden Norval Mitchell be appointed as council members to the audit committee. And I would move those nominations.
Seconded. It's moved and second. Any comments from any member of council? Question's been called. We'll go to the vote. And the motion's passed unanimously. I'll give you back the chair, Madam Warden.
Thank you. Next on our agenda would be the warden's report, so I'll hand it back to you, sir.
Go ahead, Warden, with your report.
I have numerous pieces of paper this evening, folks. I'll try not to miss anything. I'd like to begin by thanking a lot of people for all of the dedication and hard work that's gone on since the advent of Hurricane or Tropical Storm Fiona. All of the volunteers out there, the comfort centers that opened up, our first responders, community members, the Nova Scotia Power folk, and the folk from all over this country and our neighbor to the south who came to our assistance. Ground Search and Rescue for going out in challenging conditions and thankfully having a successful search for a 4-year-old child in Pictou County. And finally, I'd like to thank our staff, all of our staff, for their hard work and dedication. Many of them were on point for the entire time during and after the hurricane, and keeping our systems working, and certainly appreciated by myself, and I know council in the whole and the residents that we serve. And I just wanted to say a very sincere thank you. Let me find my notes here. On August the 24th, I was on an NSFM housing call. I attended the Atlantic Mayors Congress from August the 25th to the 27th. It was probably one of the, if not the most interesting conferences I've had the privilege of attending in my 25 years as an elected municipal representative. I'll just touch briefly. There was a presentation on enhancing democracy presented by the Mayor of Moncton. The Halifax presentation dealing with what the HRM is doing around climate change. A presentation called Eco 360 given by a solid waste division of the Southeast Regional Services Commission in New Brunswick, which was incredibly interesting to me, and what they've done with their landfill and their systems, and they're actually generating electricity. It was extremely interesting. We had a presentation around basic income, which was something I had not thought a lot about up until that time, but I certainly came away with a great understanding of why HRM Council supported that. And since then, I did forward, I think, to folks an invitation to sign up for a presentation, which involves the same lady who was the point on the presentation we received. It'll be a virtual presentation, and I just encourage anyone who had the time to take that in, because it was, the facts and the information they have are truly interesting. It was a presentation from the Shediac as a smart energy community, which is part of a Smart Grid Atlantic, which is a research, development, and deployment program, which is a 4-year program. So those were all fascinating topics. I can forward the slides to anyone who wishes more information. I'm happy to chat with anyone with a little more detail. As I said, I truly enjoyed hearing what other municipalities in Atlantic Canada are doing, and because of that, I would like to ask at this time that Council endorse East Hants once more becoming a member of the Atlantic Mayors Conference. I do think it's a worthwhile thing to attend, and so I would make that motion.
It's moved in second that East Hants joins again. Any comments or questions from anybody? Question being called, we'll go to the vote. And the motion's passed unanimously.
Thank you.
Back to you, Madam Warden.
On September the 7th, there was an NSFM special meeting, which I attended virtually. September the 10th, I was pleased to, along with Councillor Rhino, attend the Minisville ball closing at the Moody Field in Minisville. Those folks were just really wanted to show us what they'd done. Councillor Green was not at home at the time, wasn't able to attend, but they were very pleased with the assistance they received from the municipality and were very happy to show what they had done with their grant. On September the 13th, the CAO and the Director of Finance and myself met with Jimmy McAlpine, representing the Property Value Services Commission, PVSC, just to go over their responsibilities and how we felt about how they were meeting their mandate and any issues or suggestions we might have. It was a good meeting. On September the 17th, I was able to attend the Explore Your Own Backyard barbecue and event at Burncoat Head Park. Councillor Rhino and I barbecued over 400 hot dogs, and it was, I think, greatly appreciated and enjoyed by all of the public, and we had an excellent turnout of staff to assist with that, and Councillor Rhino, myself, the Deputy Warden, and Councillor Tingley were able to be there, and I think it's the first year Councillor Green has missed since he's been on council. So it was an enjoyable time, a lovely day, and I might have eaten one or two of those hot dogs myself. I also, on September the 17th, was privileged to attend the Shubenacadie Fire Department's 60th anniversary department. Was very pleased to attend that and hear a bit of history on the department, and very happy to congratulate them on their achievements. And we certainly appreciate all our volunteer departments, and 60 years is certainly a milestone to be proud of. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that since we last met as a council, Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II has passed, and we did do the official day of mourning for Her late Majesty on September the 19th. On September the 21st, well, most of us were on the municipal engagement, no, that's a different one. Municipal engagement session rehousing, that was a small meeting. There was really very little to say about that, except we certainly attempted to reinforce that while we are interested in assisting in ways that we might be able, that housing is a provincial responsibility. The special meeting of NSFM, I mentioned that, and most of us were there, so we're all aware of the bylaw changes and the postponement of further discussion on those, and more probably to come on that later. Then that brought us into Fiona. And the aftermath, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, the fire halls that were open, I believe the pool was open and giving, allowing folks to have showers and get water. And just once more, I just want to really say how grateful and appreciative I am to live in East Hants and in our communities here. And I think as many as are the differences in parts of our municipality, I do believe that there's a common thread there, and that we all look out for one another and we all look out for our neighbors when we can. And that brings me to one other item that I'm going to raise at this time. We do have a meeting coming up to discuss the boundary review, the polling district boundary review. And we have several scenarios from staff, but in order to perhaps maybe expedite things a bit and perhaps not arrive at that meeting and then tell staff to do something different along with it, I would like to make a motion that for that meeting, that staff include some possible 12 district scenarios for discussion when they're preparing the boundaries presentation.
Do you second that, Councillor? It's moved and second that staff look at 12 districts in the boundary review. Do you have a seconder? Mr. Ryan, Councillor Rhino? Any comments or questions?
I believe Councillor Musa had.
Councillor Musa, you.
A great idea, because if we don't do that, we're gonna have a district like Lance District. It's gonna be not 25%, maybe 60% higher than.
Question is being called. We'll go to the vote. And the vote's passed unanimously. Anything else, Madam Warden?
I think that's about it. I guess since we last met, I think most folks are aware that we had an accident whereupon an 18-wheeler left the road and knocked the Center Rawdon Hall pretty much off its foundation. So still waiting on insurance and everything regarding that, but it's certainly been a loss to the community of Center Rawdon. One more item, as I look at my notes. See, I made notes tonight, so. No, I think that's, no, that's a different note. So, no, that concludes my warden's report for this evening. Thank you, sir.
Any questions to the warden? Seeing none, I'll give you back the chair.
Thank you. Okay. Next, we will move to business from councillors. I will start, I never remember where I started the month before, so we'll go over to Councillor Rhino and start there this evening.
Thank you, Madam Warden. Just a couple of things. I too, along with, as you mentioned, attended the Miles for M&M Ball closing. As you said, we both cooked hot dogs at the Burncoat Head Park there. Mine were arranged a lot neater than yours, but that's all I'll say about that. Just that same evening, we went to the Shibby Fire on their 60th anniversary, which was quite a milestone for that group. The feelings on Fiona or the people in District 5 that still don't have power are very upset. They have not seen a power truck of any kind in the area. And even in my vocation, I have not seen a power truck. And I understand that they go to the populous areas first. But when 215 was extremely hardly hit down in Salma, there's one place we cannot get an emergency vehicle through. And to me, that should be priority. And it doesn't seem to be, it seems to be following on deaf ears. I've been in constant communication with our MLA, John McDonald, and he was trying to work on the program, but it just seemed that Nova Scotia Power is putting out a kind of an automated response. And, I understand that it does take time, but the first priority should be to emergency vehicles to make those roads passable, and it doesn't seem to be happening, and it's not getting. So I hope Councillor McDonald MLA McDonald can get this expedited. But it was a bad storm, and I was all over my district, the next day, and while there was touches of damage everywhere, the 215 was extremely hard hit down through the shore area. So anyway, we hope that we start to see something move around there. But I know when this is all done and clear, there will be issues, and that will be one that I will be bringing up with Nova Scotia Power. It's just not right to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else, Councillor Rhino?
No, thank you.
Councillor Garden Cole.
Thank you, Madam Warden. It's been relatively slow in District 1 the past month or so, being on summer break. School is back in, however, and I'd like to ask everyone to be especially careful in the mornings and afternoons with walkers and children being bused, and just getting back into that routine of being cognizant of that. Lots of development underway or at the point of completion in District 1. If you drive through, you'll see it to the left and right and everywhere, so there's lots going on. I recently met with the fire department in District 1 as they make plans for their future there. I also had a home care worker contact me. We erected no parking signs on one side of the road in Concord Way, which was a good development for parking issues and snow removal and whatnot. However, I did have an interesting phone call with a home care worker who just brought something to my attention, and I wanted to pass it on. And that is the challenge that home care workers and VONs have when providing care for people who live in apartments, and how parking is often a challenge for them. They were concerned about the reduction in those spots on the side of the road, and it was something that I had never really thought about, but of course it makes sense. And just another reason for us to be aware of the importance of having adequate parking at developments for reasons such as that, for those folks that need that care. Just let me check my notes here. Lastly, one thing that didn't slow down in the summer, and that is the traffic issues that we're having in the subdivisions in Enfield, in the Albany Drive, and especially the White Estates area. I had talked to councillors about having a peek at the new development at the top of Tyler Street, and the obvious increased traffic that's going to bring down through the subdivision, down through White Estates. Also, the construction traffic that they've had to deal with during this extensive development. Can I get an update on where we are with traffic calming areas in that from the department?
Thank you. through you, Madam Warden. For White Estates, staff have focused on 2 intersections to convert them to 3-way stops, that being the intersection of White Road and Tyler Street, as well as Tyler Street and Carriage. Those are 2 major intersections that will cause a start-stop, especially for all the development traffic essentially coming out of the Tyler Street extension area and the Sam Crescent area. That work order was put in the spring for that. There's been delays in our supplier. We've been following up, but that is behind schedule. It will happen this year. It's already been booked. We're just waiting for the contractor to execute that change. It'll be 3-way stops with new information signs for residents. Once erected, we'll have a social media education, but that will be a step 1. That's something that we can do this fiscal year as a start, and then assess from there.
Okay. And so through you, Madam Warden, to staff, so, I mean, I'll just be frank, you know, these residents are looking at Halifax County, and everything is a process. And I explain that, but, you know, they're looking at, and there does seem to be a drive on in Halifax County, especially, not so much the city, for speed bumps and things of that nature. And, you know, they're hoping that that will be coming to this area. And that would be something that would be considered at budget time, I guess. Correct? Something like that would be something that would have to be considered at budget time. It's not just something that we, you know, can throw together, that's for sure, because there's a need for it.
Through Madam Warden, I would comment on that. So there is there's 2 outstanding reports due for council. One is specifically around speed in Mount Uniacke and overall traffic calming. So those are 2 items that staff need to address. There has been a staff shortage. We're several staff positions short in the roads and engineering division, which is causing some delays on getting some thoughtware in there. So instead of writing it, the short notes of order of operations for how this will play out. So the quick action for White Estates was mentioned. There is an opportunity for a trial of speed tables in a specific area next fiscal. Staff are looking at the potential of an area in the Alderney subdivision to learn and understand. And staff intend to develop, as part of the budget consideration for next fiscal, consideration of permanent speed display signs at major community entry points. So that would be permanent fixtures focused on roots and trunks. That has been early high-level discussions with the province on what they would allow. They're open to the concept, and it's being done across the province. So staff are working on what that would look like and understanding what that consideration is. That would happen before anything like in subdivision speed humps, or speed tables, depending. We'll get into that when we get into that level of detail of speed bumps versus speed humps versus speed tables. That's a discussion for another day, but that actually takes time. We need to do technical analysis. It's meant for in subdivisions, not on major thoroughfares. That type of implementation, pre-existing subdivisions, because it's more expensive. Much more expensive to redesign a road after the fact. Your only options are really speed humps or speed tables at that point. But we need to put them in the right locations, and we need to be consistent. We need to create our approach for that. In lieu of that, we would default to what HRM is doing, but we need a plan and a subsequent phasing. I wouldn't see us going beyond just a trial location next year. We need to get a bigger plan in place and understand what we are allowed to do on municipal roads versus provincial roads, specifically in subdivisions, because that's a complex factor that Halifax doesn't have to consider in their subdivisions. It's absolutely on staff's radar, but it's a layered approach that we can tackle. So it is the intent to put detail in a report on those topics, for council consideration. It's just, we're just not there yet on staffing, but it is top of mind, and there are some things that will be brought forward for budget consideration this coming budget cycle.
Okay, thank you for that update. And I'll just finish with this. So White Estates was a residential subdivision. It now has a fairly large development that is being erected at the top of it with almost 100 units and basically 2 vehicles coming out of every unit just with the price of them. So I think that I realize it's a process, but I think we definitely need to, we approve these developments in the spots that they're in, and then the folks that are living down below them are the ones who are having to live with the consequences of it. So any way that we can help them out to try and slow that speed down, I think that we really need to take that seriously. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Eisner.
Gentlemen. Thank you, Madam Warden. I had a call from the Lions Club, we got the meal canceled down to Legion. So they're gonna postpone it for another, I think, in November. I was down at the coffee shop, our new one. I encourage anybody to go down and try out the new donuts they got there. They're extremely good. And I met a young family there with just the mother and the daughter, which she's 4 years old. Her and her husband moved from Toronto, and they live in White's Estate. And they couldn't say much more as how nice it was. So I just thought that was nice. Was working with on this hurricane with the crew from Fredericton. These guys been on the road a lot. I know they're not getting around to all the houses, but I just took the time, went out and bought a couple of boxes of donuts while I was cutting under my line because they could actually release the transformers so I could do mine. And they appreciate the donuts but they were from Tim Hortons because the other ones were sold out. That was good. Well, it was nice to work with those fellas. That's all they do is travel. I said, how far do you guys go? He said, Florida. So they just they were called. They said, probably as soon as we get out of here, but they got a call. They said they had a house in Orange Settlement. They said, they got to go. And they said, you go, leave mine because it's just too much shopping. But they haven't got back yet to do that one, but they're busy. Hats off to them. That's all, Madam Warden.
Councillor Head.
Nothing at this time, Madam Warden.
Deputy Warden Mitchell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. August the 6th, I attended a meeting here at the municipal building with the federal minister and some staff from Future Works dealing with workplace development and trying to increase our workforce, which is diminishing. On September the 6th, I attended the public information meeting in Mount Uniacke, looking at the 2 new developments proposed down there. On September the 7th, I attended a special Zoom meeting with the NSFM regarding their changes. On the 17th of September, I had the opportunity to serve the lovely customers or travelers who were at the Explore Your Backyard in Burncoat Head Park. Leaving that, some information from the FCM as a director. During the week of September 6th to the 9th, I attended Zoom meetings on 3 of the 4 days. The topics discussed were safety and crime prevention, environment and sustainability. The following week, I traveled to Strathcona County, Alberta, to do the in-person meetings, and the topics that were discussed was anti-racism and equity. During the rural forum,
The discussion dealt with getting ready for extreme weather events and also in bus transit. Also, a topic was women's participation in municipal government, more equitable and diverse. The incentive going to the federal government was the RCMP retroactive pay to be paid by the federal government because some of the smaller municipalities couldn't afford. It was a burden. Affordable housing, rapid housing initiative was discussed. It's nice to have those discussions, and putting money forward, but if you don't have the workers to do the job, you're still behind. Mental health and addiction was a main topic. Climate change mitigation, which, as you can see, is very much needed across Canada and around the world. Rural broadband was discussed, and rural transit. Those are some of the topics that were discussed in my trip to Alberta. 2 questions through to staff that might be able to answer. I'm getting questions from people about the federal boundary review. Any update? Nothing? And a question through to infrastructure and operations. Is there much demand for the slow down signs that we printed, and are they working? I think the only one in my street is the one I have. And Hemlock has a few, but there doesn't seem to be any requests for them.
Through Madam Warden, there hasn't been a demand lately. There was an initial push where signs were deployed, and I've seen them up in different areas across the municipality. There's still many remaining and available for any members of the public that would like to put that up as a reminder to their neighbors of what they want their community experience to be. So definitely spread the word that there is inventory for those willing and interested in those signs.
Just a comment, some of the residents that live on Hemlock, instead of going down Hemlock and going on Endale to catch Elmwood to go out, they now go up Hemlock and catch Elmwood at the top, so there's no stop signs and it's straight towards number 2. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Green.
Not a lot to report. Hurricane Fiona and COVID managed to adjourn our fire department barbecue twice. First, we had some members that were down with COVID, and we moved it to the next Sunday, and we had a hurricane, so we didn't think we should be maybe out Sunday morning trying to barbecue. So that is now moved to the 16th of October as the barbecue at Burncoat. Yes, first year I've missed out of since I've been on council. It is, but I probably could have went, but my sister told me, "You're not standing beside me if you go." What's the word? So, and anyway, and I honestly can say that COVID, I would not wish it on anybody. It is a terrible session to go through. No, it is, and I thank those councillors that reached out. I thank you all for reaching out to see how I was feeling in that. Other than that, there's not a lot to report, only I concur with Councillor Rhino. The damage on the 215 is catastrophic. There's just no other way to describe it. There are still trees hanging in there. There's tunnels cut in them. You might get our rescue through to Maitland, maybe, and that would be it. Now we're running a 3/4 ton truck, so. But any big, like fire trucks, inaccessible. If we go to Maitland, we have to go around and out and up the Rock Road, down into South Maitland and around that way to get to that side. So it's really a precarious situation for emergency services of any type. So anyway, that's all I have to report.
Thank you. I just wonder if that concern could be conveyed. I don't know if EMO are still meeting on this or not, and certainly reinforce that with the folks at that level. Thank you. Councillor Perry.
Thank you, Madam Warden. Yeah, I want to say thanks again for all the volunteer firefighters that were out right after Fiona in the communities. to help clear roads, tape off hazards of down lines, and check and inform on residents on multiple side roads. They went out of their way to make sure they could clear the main trunks and do what they could in a safe manner and inform residents where things were unsafe. So that's greatly appreciated by many people in the community. I'd also like to give kudos to residents of East Hants. I know it happened all over, but those that had generators took in people into their homes for hot meals, gave them showers. That was happening all over, I know, my community and many others across municipalities. So I think everybody should take a little bit of pride in knowing that, you know, we do look after our own here in East Hants and in Nova Scotia. Continuing on with the theme for the volunteer fire department. One of the things that is going to be sent out, but I want to state it publicly, I want to thank all the volunteer fire departments who came from mutual aid this summer for the 2 brush fires that happened in Mount Uniacke. They were 2 major brush fires that could have got even worse. The second one, Mother Nature helped out and the winds changed and blew it back on itself. Otherwise, that could have been a lot worse. And I believe 14 or 16 departments came in mutual aid for that second one. And I'll be sending out personal thank yous to them later on after I talk to the chief in Uniacke and find out how he wants to proceed. During the lead up to the last hurricane, Tim Hortons in Mount Uniacke, like many Tim Hortons, were doing their Smile Cookie campaign. They set an ambitious goal to sell 5,000 Smile cookies during the week, and even though they got cut off on Friday at 5 o'clock and could not sell on Saturday, they achieved their goal by selling 5,576 cookies. So that money is going to go to a charity located within the community, which will definitely be well received. And kudos to all staff and all residents and people who bought Smile cookies during that campaign. It's a great way for funds to reach a lot of community groups, food banks that will make a huge difference this fall. To build on, Councillor Garden-Cole said, school is back in session. You know, ask drivers to slow down, watch their speed, don't pass buses, look out for children as they go to and from school. It's one thing to be speeding through subdivisions where there's sidewalks. It's another thing to be speeding through the rural area where children are walking on the side of the road where, in some cases, there's not much of a side of the road to walk on. So just ask residents to please slow down and look after the youth and the young ones as young as 4 and 5 walking on the side of the road. I also, as all of council, attended the NSM virtual meeting for that special bylaw thing, and I can just say publicly that I was disappointed in how that went, and the fact that the answer to my question was, we are going to change so then we can make a plan after we change. Normally you make a plan that requires change. You don't just change to then make a plan. And I still can't get by that. It still doesn't make sense to me. On September 6th, the public information session was I attended that in Mount Uniacke with my fellow councillor, and the deputy warden also attended. And I want to pass on to staff, very well done. A lot of residents spoke to me afterwards and were impressed by the professionalism, the honesty, and the straightforwardness with their presentation. They answered what they could, and when they didn't have the answer and it went somewhere else, they told the people where they could go to find the answer or what to contact to get it. And that was well appreciated. There also was a lot of education that staff was doing for some of the residents that was outside the scope of the actual presentation, but it was very well received. And I just want to say kudos to staff for that great presentation, and they did a great service for the municipality. And that brings me to the end. I guess the last thing I can say is October 22nd, the Uniacke Volunteer Fire Department, in cooperation with the Masonic Lodge, are hosting Jimmy Flynn. Tickets are on sale at the Fire Hall, and it's for 19 and over. Jimmy Flynn will be doing his adult presentation, not a family-friendly one. So you can contact the Uniac Fire Hall for tickets if you're interested. And that's it, Warden. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Musa. My apologies, the system is very slow.
Thank you, Madam Warden. I don't want to repeat everything he said. I agree on most of it. And about Fiona, I think it taught us a lesson. We are very, very vulnerable. Like, in 1 second, you could lose everything. We lost power, we lost internet, we lost connection with the whole world. Like, we didn't know. Actually, myself, I couldn't do anything because I didn't know what's happening. I was worried about the few meat things I have in the freezer. But after I saw what everybody lost, I said, thanks God, for everybody being safe and for all the volunteers we have. And about the speed, Sandra, sometimes I wish like the traffic in Mount Uniacke is bumper to bumper, because that will fix a lot of problem for the speed, because so many people are driving like without any, like, I don't know how to say it, without any respect to anybody on the road, like passing you 120 in the 70 zone, like something's got to be done. I think there should have some radars somewhere, hidden radars or something, but those signs, they didn't do the job. They're good, they look good. Some people respect them, but the people who don't respect anything, they're not gonna respect any sign. And I've seen a lot of people lately, like I came close the other day. I don't want to talk again about the passing lane on the highway one, but I was coming out of the restaurant. I look left, nobody's coming, so I tried to get in. As soon as I got in, somebody decided to pass the other car coming, and I saw him, like I said, he's dead, because I have a 250 truck, and it was very close. So I think we should pressure our MLA. We should pressure everybody. That's a very dangerous, and it's not gonna cut any traffic. It's like 300 meters away from the exit, but that could be the difference between life and. It's very dangerous. And about the Explorer, your backyard, I was so looking forward to go there, but I would be dead if I went, because my daughter's wedding, I would have missed. If I knew she's doing it again, I would have missed it, but I had to go to her wedding. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Counselor Tingley.
Okay, I'll just highlight a few things, I guess. I attended a NSFM Group Insurance Committee meeting on September the 15th. I was asked a few months ago to get involved in this committee, and what they're trying to do is add a lot more value for their member municipalities. They're investigating ways to get their broker and insurer to add more value around risk management, coverage, that sort of thing. I think it'll take a while, but I don't know much about NSFM because I haven't been around that long, but as far as I could speak from this insurance group committee, they are definitely going to work hard to try to add some value for the municipalities. Warden Rolston mentioned about the barbecue at Burnt Coat Head. Yes, I attended that as well. Beautiful park. We usually, my wife and I usually go out there a couple of times a year. One thing I didn't know that I found out when we were doing the barbecue is they get 9,000 visitors per month, one of the staff told me, which was quite surprising. I thought that was a lot. Fiona, I shared with the other councillors, and that I received a few calls before, during, and after Fiona. I think we escaped the wrath of Fiona quite well compared to the rest of Atlantic Canada. I work for an insurance claims company, and we've got adjusters here from Atlantic Canada, across Canada, and even the US. handling claims around Atlantic Canada. Some people are just devastated. And you see the reports on the news. I did take a drive up to White Estates after Councillor Garden Cole sent her email around. I had been up there before, and I know that the area is quite dense, especially this one crescent that goes in there, and there's a lot of traffic that comes down. And the day I was there, actually, there was some speeding vehicles, and one in particular was a 5-ton truck coming off the job site with a load of debris, and he was going a pretty good clip down Tyler. So if they're getting reports about speeding, obviously speeding is a problem. The other thing is I noticed there's how busy it is once you get down to Highway number 2. Question for staff, I guess. Is there a need to have lights at that intersection now from the point of view of accidents or, danger as far as accidents, pedestrians, just to improve the flow of traffic? Would I stop to get an answer, or I've got a few other items, or I can continue on?
Through Madam Warden, the intersection of White Road and Highway 2 becomes the jurisdiction of the province. So to approve signalization or to trigger that need, it needs to come through the province. That said, the municipality has been advocating for traffic signalization there in the past, and if anything, the traffic's only increased, right? Our population's only increasing, the number of vehicles at those intersections are only increasing, and so where the municipality has already documented a need in the past to the province, we could continue to advocate for that, and if there was regardless of any future development, the needs that existed 3 years ago, 5 years ago, they're just compounding. So the municipality was concerned before, and we need the province to say yes or engage in that kind of conversation. So to trigger something like that, it would require another request or review, likely a letter to the province, to the Department of Public Works, if that was the wish of council, or as it comes up in a next approval. So these things can come up through developments where there's comments from Public Works, and that's usually, they trigger a traffic analysis at that time. If not, you have to specifically request, a municipality would have to specifically request a review of a specific intersection to be done if it wasn't part of a development review concept. But those would be the options council could pursue if it was a topic you were looking to pursue.
So at what point is a study done, or do they know they meet the criteria that lights are needed here? Like when is it?
If I might interject, have they not acknowledged that it's already at that level?
The comments from Curly's development site.
Through you, Madam Warden, I believe when the application was in for the development at the bottom of White Estates, did the traffic analysis show, John, that the lights were already warranted there, or am I thinking about Elmwood?
Yeah, there was a warrant for lights just based on background and projected traffic from the subdivision.
So through you, Madam Warden, the analysis has already been done. It would require council to figure out whether they wanted to go ahead and ask the province to look at putting lights there, and then the question will be who's going to pay for it.
I'm just making the comment, like, I don't know if lights need to be there, but if they need to be there, I think the steps should be made to progress towards it, and not wait for a catastrophe to happen. But I'll just leave it at that.
I see Councillor Garden Cole. Well, this is in her district. I'll allow her to weigh in.
Thank you, Madam Warden. So so it would be a question if they were going to pay for it, if we were going to pay for it. Yes, I would like to make a motion that now this is a hypothetical. Yes, I would like to make a motion that we petition for lights, for them to put lights there. But then again, it's going to be a matter of cost. That might not be budgeted, but it would also be a process, right? I mean, it wouldn't be something that could happen. Okay. So I would like to make a motion that we petition the province to do what they need to do in order to have a set of lights at the junction of White Road and Highway number 2 in lieu of it was full to capacity, and since then, we've had a development that is in the completion stages up there, just to add to what was already there, so.
So you've heard the motion. Do we have a seconder? The motion is to petition have staff write a letter to ask the province to follow whatever procedure they would proceed to establish a set of lights at that intersection. Do we have a seconder? Do we have a seconder?
I'll second it.
Councillor Tingley has seconded it. Okay, Jesse, you wanted to weigh in on that? No. Okay. Okay, I have 3 folks on here to the motion. Councillor Busa?
Thank you, Madam Warden. So just one question to Jesse. If we have to pay for that light, where the money is gonna come from?
Through Madam Warden, that would be determined through the process. Typically, anything traffic related is general tax rate. Roads are general tax rate. So signalization would be general tax rate. What my understanding of the motion is that the intent of council is for staff to advocate for lights and get a process established where there would be a decision that would be able to be made in the future, not committing any financial funds at this time, rather get it documented what needs to be true for this to happen so that a future decision could come forward, which would include cost choices and options. If that is the intent, that's the time we would get into the cost breakdown. But as I said, roads are general tax rate, so I would flag that.
Okay, one more thing. So since we have an MLA that's been on council for so many years and he know about the problem, have we engaged him on that topic? Is there any money he could be, does he have any power over the
We don't
Department
know
of
at this time.
Transportation?
Perhaps the province will fund it.
Yeah. So to speak to the question, there has been informal dialogue between staff and the MLA about the intersection and thoughts and exchanging, but nothing official with official decisions. So getting an official dialogue started, I think, would be advisable. I think it's a good way to make it official and get the topic on the books, and it triggers action and forces us to complete it until the end of the topic. It'll get on our status update report, and it won't come off until it's finished. So it's a good way to proceed.
Thank you.
Councillor Perry.
Thank you. Speaking in support of the motion, I think it's a great way to approach it. The one thing I really have to say is, so the public understands, is we just went through Fiona. There is massive devastation to a lot of roadways across the province, right? There's going to be a huge economic cost just to fix roads, and the budget, there will be some come from the federal into disaster relief, but timing for things with public works possibly could take longer than before, just because there's so much to fix to get back to where we were pre-storm before we can do improvements. Thank you.
Deputy Warden.
Yeah, question through you to stop, Madam Warden. So each request would be separate and not a blanket for other streets at but number 2?
Through Madam Warden, the understanding of staff on how the motion was brought forward was that it was site-specific to the intersection of White Road and Highway 2, and that's what we would be focusing on as staff.
So any other roads have to be site-specific, is what you're telling me?
Yes.
Through Madam Warden, the motion is site-specific, so we would write letters and start the process on that specific location versus additional locations along the number 2. I do know that the intersection of Elmwood and Highway 2 has come up in other topics and other development reviews. I think the scenario is a bit different for those locations and are tied into development concepts that maybe the municipality may want to take a different approach. But I actually think that dealing with White Estates, which is from an individual perspective, both are challenging locations. White Road's more challenging with the current density being added to the back end of that subdivision. So I think it's a great starting point, and whatever is established in White Road will then be able to be reapplied to other noteworthy locations. The next obvious one's corner of Elmwood and 2.
Okay, thanks.
Any further discussion on the motion? Question's been called. Somebody hasn't voted, folks. So the motion has passed unanimously by those who were present. Hey, back to you, Councillor Tingley.
Just a couple of things. I'd like to ask if I can have permission to attend the Rules of Order and Meeting Process Workshop put on by AMANS NSFM on November the 18th.
You making that a motion that you
Yep.
approve? Moved by Councillor Tingley, seconded by Councillor Musa, that Councillor Tingley attend the workshop. Is there any discussion? Question's been called. The motion is passed unanimously. I've just been informed that Councillor McPhee, who I neglected earlier, we do have regrets from Councillor McPhee this evening, but he had already also expressed an interest in attending that. So I just ask if someone would make a motion authorizing Councillor McPhee to attend as well if he wishes. Councillor Perry.
I'll make the motion that Councilman McPhee also attend.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor? I think we have to vote on this one.
Question.
The question, yeah. And the motion is passed unanimously. Back to you, Councillor Tingley.
I'd like to request that the municipality staff, whoever, write the province and request that the province pave from the entrance of Logan Drive, where it intersects with Highway 2, to where it intersects with Tower View and Logan. In the past few months, the province paved Logan because it was in really bad shape, a lot of potholes. And for some reason, they started where Tower View and Logan intersect, but the road, the Logan, where Logan comes from Highway number 2 to that intersection, they didn't pave. And there's a good-sized pothole, which is gonna be a lot bigger pothole right at the intersection now, and there's a lot of cracks in that area as well. And I think, I don't know why they didn't pave it. It just seems like a logical thing that they would have paved it. The reason they paved it is because it was in poor condition through normal wear and tear, and also trucks, when they were building the roundabouts and the overpass, were traveling up and down Logan Drive and caused further damage. But they couldn't get into that part of Logan without driving to through the first part of Logan first. So I'm just requesting that we request the province to pave that part of it as well.
So you're making that a motion, Councillor, that we
Yes,
write a
yeah,
letter?
yeah.
Moved by Councillor Tingley, seconded by Councillor Musa. Is there any discussion on the motion? Councillor Head.
Thank you, Madam Warden. In response to that, the road that I live on has been ongoing now for 4 years, and what they do, they budget so much money per road. They pave to where the money runs out, and that's as far as they go. And this has been going on my road now for 4 years, and there's still a section left to be paved. So it may not get done this year, but it may get done next year. But I think petitioning, I don't think it's going to do any good, but we can try them. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Question's been called. And the motion is passed unanimously.
Next item, I received a letter from some residents on Logan and Tower View regarding sewer backup, and I've shared that with Jesse, and they're asking for the next steps. And I really don't know what the next steps are. I'm not an engineer or expert in infrastructure, so I'm asking Jesse what the next steps would be.
Through you, Madam Warden, this is a topic that has been discussed in council previously. At the time, there was a motion to consider a further study. It didn't go to a vote at the time. What staff had indicated in a review of the area was that there was no conclusive evidence of damage to municipal infrastructure causing any events from last winter. It was February, a winter of freeze-thaw phenomenon. So what staff did do at that time in response to that was to inspect mains throughout that subdivision and towards the number 2 highway. There were no blockages or major damage to the main sewer lines that were determined or found. There was some suggestions for consideration given to individual residents in some scenarios. Each property is its own individual scenario versus a whole system-wide topic. So there can be challenges specifically with older homes that were predating standards that we mentioned on elevation changes. So if you have a very shallow sewer lateral and don't change that can cause problems over time. Settling of foundations can cause problems over time, and that's an individual personal property challenge. I wouldn't comment on any specific dwelling, but I'm just throwing that out there that was a conversation held with some of those residents. And what the municipality has done as of late, as recent as this week. So as part of our process where this topic has been in the recent past come up, we had municipal staff out on the weekend, post Fiona, checking manholes, checking sewer lines throughout that subdivision, looking for potential hotspots. None were found on Tower View or in Logan specifically. There was some other challenged areas where there were backups, but they weren't in that area, oddly enough. So there isn't a correlation of a ongoing repetitive action from that type of event. They were different types of events. One was a freeze-thaw winter season. This was post-tropical, so it's not like for like, so it's hard to say. What the municipality is undergoing right now is not specific to that subdivision, but the system as a whole. We've hired RV Anderson, who is doing an overall service capacity study. They're going to build thoughtware on what our overall capacity. That doesn't get into issues of identifying damage, but as we've mentioned, staff haven't found any indication of damage to the existing system. Just that might give us some thought onto larger scale capacity projects that may impact that neighborhood, which may give us another opportunity to get in the ground and look at that time. It wouldn't be necessarily immediate action. So right now there isn't a action plan on that letter or that inquiry. Staff haven't gone further than what we've already done for due diligence at this point, and allowing for further information to be collected through the RV Anderson report. And then we'll assess outcomes at that point. But beyond that, there hasn't been a mandate or an identified need from the staff level to go further.
Okay, thanks for your response. The last thing I have on my item is regarding open roadside ditches and drains. I noticed that Councillor Garden Gold had an inquiry about this, and I've had some inquiries about it as well. And the questions that come up are who's responsible for maintaining the ditches? Who's responsible to remove the grass and the weeds and the trees and vegetation? Repairing erosion around culverts, removing snow from around culverts, backup of water from ditches into basements. Does the Nova Scotia Ditch and Watercourse Act apply to this in any way? Are there any other statute laws or bylaws that apply to roadside ditches? Just to questions around maintenance of the ditches overall. And I'm just wondering if you can answer the question, or if we need some kind of a study on that, or...
Through Madam Warden, if it was something that council wanted to learn more on, I would suggest a report on level of service and understanding the governance around ditches and driveways. So staff could provide an information report on level of service, governance. As a whole, I can talk to the high-level principles right now. So from a municipal stance, we manage ditches with respect to functionality. So we're looking at sedimentation, not vegetation overgrowth. There was a report on vegetation that was brought forward with consideration for council to consider the aesthetic aspect and mandatory management of adjacent property owners to keep ditches cut from an aesthetic stance, not letting grass grow too high or cattails. At the time, staff's interpretation of council's result was that it wasn't something that the municipality wanted to force or enforce onto individuals. At the same time, not looking to take on that work either. So there is large overgrowth that the municipality looks to act on, but not aesthetic-based functions. If we're talking about driveway culverts, it's a good time to talk just the principles of a driveway culvert. To have a driveway, an individual applies for a driveway access permit through the municipality. And essentially, you're asking permission to cross boundaries to access your parcel. You have an easement, or you're leasing space to access. The municipality will comment on size of culverts required or validating the size of culvert, but ultimately the upkeep of that asset is on the individual homeowner. So the municipality's functional concern is for the drainage of the road. If something is blocking a personal driveway that was put there through a permit of someone asking to put that structure there, They are responsible for making sure it's cleared and functional. The municipality would jump in an emergency case, but that's the guiding principles is you asked to have a property here, you asked to have access across it, there was criteria around that. It's expected that the individual will maintain that asset up to a reasonable extent. That's been our operating principle to date. So that's around driveways. So I've talked vegetation high level, I've talked driveways high level. For me to go any farther, I think it would be appropriate for a report, and I could get staff could build more detail if that was the wish or will of council.
I'm going to let the CAO weigh in.
Through Madam Warden, if councillors are interested in the topic, there was a report back in November of 2019 that's on council chambers with respect to everything Jesse just mentioned, level of service, what do you want your communities to look like? There is a model bylaw there that was prepared at the time that council decided not to adopt. That was the prior council, but the report is all there. So perhaps if you're interested in the topic, take a read of that report. If you've already read it and you still want more information, then I would recommend maybe a memo to council that we post for your information with the information you're looking for, or a report to committee on your agenda, one of those two items.
To the topic, Councillor Musa?
Just a small one. Jesse, who's responsible for cutting the weed on the shoulder of the road? Like, I'm not talking ditches, I'm talking like in a business park. You could see a tree, like we cannot walk, you have to walk on the asphalt. And I think it's that one day job, like for whoever doing the maintenance on.
So that's the aesthetic aspect is if it's not functionally impeding the drainage of the road, then there wouldn't be action. So in the Mount Uniacke Business Park, those are municipal roads. The municipality would look at the ongoing maintenance, but we don't have a service standard in today's world on aesthetics or functionality for walking. So we're not actively scheduling mowing or vegetation clearing unless it's impeding the functional use, just how we operate in today's world. So it'd be the municipality within the road right of way, but to the service letter level that we choose. And this is what the municipality as a whole has chosen to date.
The CAO
So-
has additional
So,
comments?
yeah.
So through you, Madam Warden, the business park, so Jesse's answer is related to municipal roads and the roads function that we have. We also have a responsibility as business park owners. We are the developer of the business park. So we do have some funding in our budgets to do park maintenance. But I don't believe, and Adam can correct me if I'm wrong, that we have specifically to do that kind of maintenance. But if council tells us that that's a level of service you want in your business parks, then we can certainly take that on either this fall or as part of next year's budget.
I think if we want to stay in the business of like in this business doing business park, I think we should, because a lot of employees I see them like they would like to walk, like to go to eat or something, but they have to walk on the actual road, and we have a lot like big trucks going on, and I get complaint from many businesses it doesn't look good. Thank you.
Adam?
Yeah, through you, Madam Warren, just to build on what the CAO mentioned and the concerns we're hearing. We did hear it from some of our businesses this summer as well. And through our manager of economic business development, we have it in the work plan for council's consideration to look at that service level in next year's budget. So we will be our plan is to bring forward some costing to council during the budget process on what that may look like. And then council will determine the level of service if you want to maintain the ditches, cut them once a year or twice a year, find that balance of that. But that is on our radar, and we have heard it from the business community as well.
Thank you.
So just to clarify from the CAO, your recommendation is that we just read that 2019 report first and then consider what to come back to council with at that time?
Through you, Madam Warden, yes, if you haven't read the report, a lot of the questions may be answered just around level of service and standards the council has in place now. And really the messaging was at the time, if you're looking for aesthetics, you need this bylaw in place. If you're looking for functionality and having your ditches maintained, then we do that anyway. At that time, council had also increased the budget for ditch maintenance, which we've been actively using over the last number of years. So when we see a ditch that needs to be cut down for functionality of draining, then that's that budget that we would draw upon. So we did increase it. I think we increased it $15,000 at one point back in 2019 for the 2020 budget. But I think as far as your communities go, what you're looking for is and I've seen the emails from your constituents, they're looking for people to be responsible to meet a certain standard that meets their standard in their neighborhood. And council has spoken before that they're not interested in regulating that through a bylaw. So this council may feel differently. If you want that brought back, then it would have to be a council decision to bring that bylaw back for consideration.
Personally, I would like to see the aesthetics regulated a little bit, because it does look bad if you've got a nice subdivision and some of the ditches are not maintained. I think somebody should be maintaining it.
So are we agreed? Are we going to go back and review that report and then revisit? Is
Yes.
that acceptable?
So that's it for me.
Okay. All right, councillors. I would like to hand the mic over to the deputy warden for a moment if I could. I did miss one item in my report, and I'll make it quick.
Go ahead, Madam Warden.
I would just like to make a motion that we ask staff or send under my signature a letter to the Chignecto Central Region Center for Education, and also jointly to the Provincial Department of Education, and ask them to do a review on the busing standards, which currently expect children as young as 4 years old to walk as long as 1.6 kilometers each way to and from school, and children, once they are in junior high or whatever, to walk, I believe it's 2.4 kilometers each way to and from school. I don't know when these distances were established, but I would like to make a motion that we ask them to review them, especially considering in the rural areas there are no sidewalks to walk on, inaccessible shoulders in the summer because of weeds in many cases, and in the wintertime because the snow is plowed there. So I'd like to make that a motion.
It's moved in second. Council Perry to the motion? No. Okay. It's moved in. Question's been called on the motion. Go to the vote. And the motion is passed unanimously. I'll give you back the chair, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Perry.
Sorry, Madam Warden, I missed one thing on my list as well. And the one thing should have stuck out to me even more because we're all wearing our orange shirts today. And that on Friday, most residents and everybody else take the time to reflect and look back on Truth and Reconciliation. It's something that is very important that our country needs to do to heal and move forward. And I just think it's something that the entire municipality should reflect on in their own personal way. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, folks. That concludes business from councillors. We do have 3 in-camera issues to discuss. A land issue, a legal issue, and personnel matters. So I would be looking for a motion to go in camera. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Musa. All those in favor? Contrary? Motion is carried. Staff There are no motions coming forward as a result of those discussions. Staff was giving in-camera direction. Councillor Musa.
Thank you. I have a request. I don't know how it's gonna go. I'm not complaining about like the business from councilors taking too long. And we had before sent emails about everything that's coming for motion and stuff. I think we should go back to that. That will cut short a lot of the discussion. And probably if we do CC staff on it, probably they could get the answer faster than having it here, because the winter season is coming and I'm not ready to drive like 40 minutes in the snow for.
I would suggest that that's a discussion that would have to be on an agenda for discussion. We've never had that rule. Some councillors voluntarily followed it, but it has never been a policy.
Oh, it's
that you
not?
have to give notice of motion.
It's not
for
about
anything for
it's
business
not
from
about
councillors.
a notice.
It's a bigger discussion we're not going to solve here tonight.
Oh, no, I'm not saying tonight, for future.
Councillor Rhino.
Well, since Councillor Moose brought it up, I'm not a fan of pre-motion things, but there's a lot of discussion that takes place in business and councillors. If the councillors themselves went to staff on their own time, we wouldn't be taking up so much time here. And that's what's holding us up here, is right there. They can find this information out themselves instead of bringing in. If you've got something specific that we have to vote on, I don't have a problem with that. But when we have to sit here and we got questions after questions that don't relate to business from councillors, but are just an inquiry, that is a problem. We've got to fix that. Thank you.
Well, perhaps on a future agenda, we can have a discussion on how we wish to handle business from councillors.
I wouldn't complain, I could stay here for 4 more hours today, but in the winter, in the snow, driving 40 minutes is not like driving 250. Some of us drive long range, and I think we should, all of us, for the safety issue, to have a little bit shorter.
Or we could do, as we always plan to do, is adjourn at adjournment time and come back on Thursday night. But we can certainly have that discussion, and, but at this point in time, at 10:08, I would be looking for a motion to adjourn. And first we have to set the time and date of the next council meetings. Sorry, October the 18th, regular meeting of council for policy, and October 26th for the regular meeting of council. Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Contrary? Motion is carried. Now I'd be looking for a motion to adjourn. Moved and seconded. All those in favor?